I never thought a simple visit to my friend's house would change me, but then his mom looked at me, smiled, and whispered, "You're too innocent, let me fix that." I never thought much of visiting my friend's place. It was usually the same, a quick hello at the door, some laughter in the living room, maybe pizza boxes scattered on the table. But that day felt different before I even realized why. The door opened, and there she was, my friend's mom. I'd seen her before, of course, but that day, something about her caught me off guard. She wasn't dressed up, not really, just a soft blouse tucked into casual jeans, her hair loosely pinned back like she hadn't tried too hard. Yet, the way she carried herself, there was this graceful calm in her presence, like she'd stepped out of a moment the rest of us were too young to understand. Her smile found me before her words did. "You must be starving," she said warmly, stepping aside to let me in. The scent of something rich, garlic, butter, maybe rosemary, floated from the kitchen. But what really struck me wasn't the food. It was the way her eyes lingered. Just a fraction longer than normal, as if she was studying me quietly, amused by something I didn't know I was giving away. I muttered a polite thank you, my voice softer than I meant it to be. She chuckled under her breath. "You're very polite," she teased, tilting her head. "Too polite, actually. Too innocent." The words slipped out so casually, but they landed heavy. I laughed awkwardly, pretending not to feel the heat rising in my face. Innocent? Maybe she meant young. Maybe she meant harmless. But the way she said it, there was a glint in her eyes, a spark of playful challenge hidden in her calm expression. We moved toward the kitchen, and as she passed me a glass of water, her hand brushed my shoulder, light, effortless, like it didn't mean anything. Still, I felt it. The faint pressure of her touch stayed long after she pulled away, my body suddenly aware of the space she occupied beside me. Her perfume was subtle, the kind that didn't try to demand attention but caught you off guard when it did. Warm, floral, with just enough sweetness to linger in the air between us. I tried to steady myself, reminding my heart not to beat so fast. She was just being kind. Friendly. That's all. But when she leaned slightly closer to set a plate on the counter, her voice lowered, smooth and playful. "Make yourself comfortable. You're too shy to be sitting there stiff as a board." Her words sank into me the way her smile had, gentle, teasing, yet strangely personal. She wasn't treating me like her son's friend anymore. Not exactly. It felt like something else. And as I sat there, pretending to focus on my phone, I realized I could still feel the warmth of her hand on my shoulder. Still hear that teasing note in her voice. Still wonder what she saw in me that made her call me innocent. I didn't know it then, but that single moment, her smile, her touch, her words, was the beginning of everything. Later that afternoon, we all drifted into the living room. My friend disappeared into the hallway, rummaging through his things for the movie we were supposed to watch. That left me sitting on the couch, half distracted by the sound of drawers opening and closing upstairs, and half focused on the woman sitting just a few feet away from me. She carried a mug of tea, cradling it with both hands, and lowered herself gracefully into the armchair across from me. For a moment it was just the two of us in the quiet, the faint hum of the refrigerator in the background, sunlight spilling in through the curtains. Her eyes found me again, that same calm but curious look as earlier. She tilted her head slightly, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "You know," she said, stirring her tea absent-mindedly, "you're a little too well-behaved for your own good." I let out a nervous laugh. "Is that bad?" She raised an eyebrow, leaning forward just enough that her presence seemed to fill the space between us. "Not bad," she murmured, the steam from her tea curling upward between us. "Just innocent. Too innocent." The way she lingered on the word made my pulse quicken. I tried to play it off, shrugging with a half-smile. "I guess I'll take that as a compliment." Her laughter was soft, almost melodic, but it carried a weight that unsettled me in the best way. She leaned back, her posture casual, but her gaze stayed locked on me. You shouldn't. Innocence is sweet, but it's also very fragile. Her words hung in the air, like smoke refusing to fade. I didn't know what to say, so I laughed again, though it came out weaker this time. She noticed. I could tell. And maybe that was what she wanted. Her fingers tapped lightly against the rim of her mug, in rhythm with her unspoken thoughts. She didn't break eye contact, and for a moment, I had the strange sense she was trying to see through me, past my polite smiles and careful words, into something I hadn't even let myself notice yet. Just then, she leaned forward again, setting her mug down on the coffee table. The movement brought her closer, close enough that I caught the warmth of her perfume again, faint but steady, like it belonged in the room as much as she did. You blush easily, she teased, her voice low, carrying a trace of mischief. I swallowed hard, pretending to focus on the television even though it wasn't even turned on. Do I? Her lips curved into that knowing smile again. It's very telling. Before I could respond, my friend's footsteps echoed down the stairs. She immediately sat back, her expression smoothing into casual warmth, as though nothing had been said at all. But for me, the damage was done. My chest felt tight, my hands restless. I couldn't shake the sound of her voice, the way she'd looked at me when she said those words. Innocent. Fragile. Telling. It was only playful teasing, wasn't it? And yet, a part of me knew there was more beneath her smile than she was letting on. It was later in the evening when I found myself alone in the kitchen. My friend had slipped out to take a call, leaving his mom and me at the table with the last of the dishes still scattered between us. She was rinsing a glass at the sink, sleeves pushed up just enough to reveal the graceful line of her arms. I watched quietly, pretending to scroll through my phone, though the truth was, I couldn't stop noticing her. The way she moved was unhurried, steady, like she belonged in every space she stepped into. She turned off the faucet, set the glass down, and then, almost without warning, pulled out the chair across from me. So, she said, leaning forward with her elbows on the table, tell me something about yourself. I laughed softly, caught off guard. What do you mean? You already know me, I'm just your son's friend. She shook her head, her smile calm but curious. That's not what I asked. I mean, what's on your mind? What do you really want, outside of classes, work, all of that? Her gaze was steady, and for a moment I felt naked under it. I searched for something to say, something safe, but the words that came out surprised me. I don't know if anyone's ever really asked me that before. Her smile faltered, just a little. That's a shame, she whispered. The room felt smaller suddenly, quieter. I looked at her, really looked, and noticed the faint tiredness behind her confident expression. The kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from carrying too much for too long. I cleared my throat gently. What about you? What do you want? The question seemed to catch her off guard. She laughed softly, but it wasn't playful this time, it was almost fragile. That's harder to answer than you'd think, she said, her eyes drifting toward the window. Some days I wonder if I've forgotten. The silence stretched, not heavy but charged, like both of us were aware we'd crossed some invisible line. She rested her chin lightly on her hand, watching me. You really do listen, don't you? I shrugged, a little embarrassed. I guess so. I mean, if someone's willing to talk, it feels wrong not to. Her expression softened, a quiet warmth replacing the teasing glint I'd seen earlier. That's rare, she murmured, reaching across the table and letting her hand rest gently against my forearm. The touch was simple, but it lit a current through me. Her hand was warm, steady, her thumb brushing once, just once, before she seemed to catch herself. Neither of us moved right away. Her eyes stayed on mine, and for a heartbeat, the kitchen no longer felt like just a kitchen. It felt like a place where something unspoken had taken root. Then, almost reluctantly, she pulled her hand back. The spell broke, but the warmth stayed. And in that quiet, I realized, I didn't just admire her. I wanted to understand her. After dinner, the house settled into that comfortable kind of quiet, where voices dropped lower, lights softened, and every sound seemed to echo a little more than it should. My friend had retreated upstairs again, leaving his mom and me to gather the last of the dishes. She moved gracefully around the kitchen, stacking plates with an ease that suggested she'd done this routine 1,000 times. I dried them one by one, stealing glances when I thought she wouldn't notice. But she did notice. I could feel it in the faint curve of her lips, in the way her eyes flicked toward me whenever I looked away too quickly. When the dishes were done, she slipped out into the garden with a light sweater draped over her shoulders. Something about the way she moved made me follow without thinking. The air outside was cool, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the corner of the yard. She walked slowly along the patio, her hands resting lightly on the railing, her gaze tilted toward the darkening sky. "You know," she said softly, not turning to look at me, "you really are too innocent." I smiled nervously, my voice caught between playfulness and truth. "You keep saying that. What does it even mean?" This time, she looked at me. Really looked. Her eyes glimmered in the dim light, equal parts amusement and something deeper, something she wasn't putting into words. "It means," she said slowly, "that you haven't been tested yet. Not really. You're still untouched by the world in ways you don't even see." Her tone wasn't sharp, it was gentle, almost protective. But it carried a weight that made my chest tighten. I wanted to answer, but the words wouldn't come. The silence stretched, filled only by the soft rustle of leaves overhead. A breeze shifted through the garden, brushing strands of her hair across her cheek. Before I even realized what I was doing, I reached out, hesitant at first, then certain, and gently tucked the loose strands behind her ear. My fingers grazed her temple, just for a moment. Warm skin against trembling fingertips. She froze. I froze. The world seemed to still around us. Her breath caught softly, and her eyes locked on mine, wide with something unspoken. For a heartbeat, I thought she might step closer. For a heartbeat, I wanted her to. But instead, she let out a quiet laugh, small, almost to herself, and shook her head. "See? Innocent," she whispered, though her voice wavered just enough to betray her own composure. I pulled my hand back slowly, the warmth of her skin lingering like a secret I wasn't ready to give up. We stood there in the quiet, neither of us saying what we both knew had just happened. And as she turned back toward the house, her sweater brushing softly against my arm as she passed, I realized something had shifted between us. The line we'd been walking, teasing, careful, undefined, had blurred. And there was no going back. The night wore on, the house quieter than ever. My friend had gone upstairs, door shut, music faintly thudding through the walls. That left the living room in stillness, dimly lit by a single lamp on the side table. I sat on the couch, scrolling through my phone half-heartedly, when she appeared again. Her sweater was draped over her shoulders, her hair let down now, softer, framing her face in a way that made her seem different. Less like the confident hostess, more like herself. She eased onto the couch beside me, not too close, but close enough that I felt the air shift, charged with the quiet awareness of her presence. For a while, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock, the hum of the fridge in the kitchen. Then, almost in a whisper, she broke the silence. "Do you ever feel unseen?" I turned my head, surprised by the question. Her gaze wasn't on me, it was on her hands, folded in her lap, thumbs fidgeting with each other. The strong, playful woman from earlier had vanished. In her place was someone softer, someone carrying a weight I hadn't noticed until now. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. More often than I'd like to admit." That got her attention. She looked at me, really looked, like she was testing the truth of my words. You? But you're young. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Everyone must notice you. I let out a breath, shaking my head lightly. People notice what they want to see. Not always who I really am. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but the words didn't come. Instead, she sighed, leaning back against the couch cushion. That's exactly it. Sometimes I wonder if I've become invisible in my own life. Like I'm here, doing everything for everyone, but no one actually sees me. The vulnerability in her voice hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to reach out, to tell her she wasn't invisible, not to me. But all I managed was a soft, "I see you." Her eyes flickered, startled. Then softened. Silence again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full. Heavy with meaning neither of us could quite put into words. Almost without thinking, she leaned against me. Just slightly at first, her shoulder pressing gently into my arm, her head tilting until it rested near my shoulder. I froze, my heart hammering, then slowly let myself breathe into the moment. Her hair brushed against my cheek, carrying the faintest trace of her perfume. The warmth of her body seeped through my shirt, steady, grounding. I could feel the rise and fall of her breathing, the soft sigh that left her lips as she settled there, as if she'd been holding something in all day and had finally allowed herself to rest. I didn't move. I didn't dare. My hand hovered, then lowered gently onto hers where it rested on her lap. She didn't flinch. In fact, her fingers curled slightly, the smallest acknowledgement that she welcomed the touch. And for the first time that night, I realized this wasn't just teasing anymore. This was something deeper, something fragile, but real. The house was asleep. At least, it felt that way. My friend's music had gone silent, his door shut for the night. I lay on the couch, restless, the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen calling louder than sleep. I finally pushed myself up and padded down the hallway. The floor creaked faintly under my steps, the air cooler now, shadows stretching longer in the dim light. I reached for a glass in the cupboard, filling it slowly with water, the sound of it echoing in the quiet. And then, behind me, her voice. Soft, low, almost a whisper. "Can't sleep either?" I turned, startled, and there she was. She stood in the doorway, wrapped in a light robe, her hair falling loose around her shoulders. The sight of her, framed by the faint glow of the hallway light, made my chest tighten. I nodded, a little too quickly. "Yeah. Just restless, I guess." She stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the floor, and leaned lightly against the counter across from me. "It happens," she said, her tone calm but quieter than before, as if acknowledging the strangeness of us being here together, alone, at this hour. For a moment, we didn't speak. I sipped my water, trying not to look at her too openly, though my eyes kept betraying me, drifting to the curve of her smile, the way the shadows traced her collarbone, the gentleness in her tired eyes. She broke the silence with a soft laugh. "You're still so stiff," she teased, her voice warm but quieter, almost tender. "Still too innocent." This time, the word didn't make me laugh. It made my pulse quicken, heat rising in my chest. "You keep saying that," I murmured, setting the glass down, my voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe I'm not as innocent as you think." Her smile faltered, not gone, but changed. Softer. Her eyes flicked to mine, and then lower, before quickly returning. She pushed herself off the counter, closing the space between us just a little. "You're sweet," she said gently, her hand lifting as if on its own. She reached up, brushing her thumb across my cheek as though wiping something away, though there was nothing there. The touch lingered, her fingers warm against my skin. I froze, my breath caught, my heart slamming in my chest. Her eyes searched mine, and for a moment, just a moment, I swore we were both leaning in, the space between us dissolving into something electric, something inevitable. But then, just as quickly, she drew her hand back. Her expression shifted, the tenderness still there but shadowed now with restraint. She exhaled softly, shaking her head with a faint smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We shouldn't," she whispered, her voice trembling ever so slightly. I swallowed hard, unable to answer. The silence between us said everything neither of us dared to put into words. She turned toward the hallway, pausing only once to glance back at me. The look lingered, soft, conflicted, unspoken, before she disappeared into the shadows. And I stood there in the kitchen, my cheek still burning where her thumb had been, knowing we had come closer than either of us intended. Closer than either of us could forget. Morning light spilled gently through the curtains, softer and kinder than the charged shadows of the night before. The house felt different in daylight, less mysterious, less heavy, but the memory of what had almost happened in the kitchen clung to me like the faint warmth of a dream. I sat at the table, nursing a cup of coffee, when she appeared. Her steps were unhurried, her expression calm, though her eyes carried the trace of someone who hadn't slept deeply. She wore the same ease as always, but there was something unspoken in the way her gaze found mine and lingered for just a moment too long. "Morning," she said softly, her voice carrying a warmth that wrapped around me like sunlight. "Morning," I echoed, my throat a little tight. She busied herself with the kettle, pouring tea, moving around the kitchen as if nothing had changed. But I knew. She knew. The silence between us wasn't empty, it was full of all the things we hadn't said, all the closeness we had nearly crossed into. Finally, she came to sit beside me. Not across the table, not at a distance, but right there, close enough that her sleeve brushed against my arm. She cradled her mug, staring into the steam for a long moment before letting out a quiet sigh. "You know," she began, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it, "you've been a reminder. A good one. That I'm still seen." I swallowed hard, my chest tightening at the honesty in her words. "You're more than seen," I said quietly. "You're unforgettable." Her head turned toward me, and the smallest smile tugged at her lips. This wasn't the playful smirk from before, or the teasing curve of someone holding back, it was something gentler. Grateful. Vulnerable. We didn't rush the moment. Instead, she reached out, her hand finding mine on the table. Her fingers laced through mine slowly, deliberately, her touch warm and steady. My breath caught, but I didn't pull away. I held on. "You really are too innocent," she teased, but this time it wasn't sharp or challenging. It was affectionate. Like a phrase she had claimed, softened into something only the two of us would understand. I smiled, shaking my head slightly. "Maybe. But you don't seem to mind." Her laughter was soft, low, almost like a sigh. She leaned gently toward me, resting her cheek against my chest. My free hand lifted, almost on instinct, resting against her back. She stayed there, eyes closed, her breathing steady and calm, as if for the first time in a long time she'd allowed herself to simply be held. The clock ticked quietly. The world outside moved on. But in that moment, it was just us, two people who had found, in each other, a kind of connection neither expected. When it came time to say goodbye, she hugged me again, longer this time. Her cheek lingered against mine, her hand pressing lightly to my back as though reluctant to let go. And as our eyes met one last time, I knew it wasn't the end. Maybe not the beginning of something reckless, but the beginning of something real. Something that had already changed us both.